simple for you.
Welcome to Comics, Cards, and Brew. It's our first episode here, and I am beyond thrilled to say that I've got this awesome guy here with me who is, in my opinion, he is ranking in the top of these writers who are writing phenomenal, relatable stories that you guys have got to get your hands on. If you did not buy one last night, I do still have copies left of the first issue right here. And no, you can't have this one. It's mine. So you're not touching this one, but I have other ones for you. So if you guys will welcome my friend here, Marvin Wynn.
How's it going, everybody? It's a windy, weird day here in Pittsburgh. I mean, we've always got the crazy weather here. So, I mean, we're dealing with it.
Well, you have windy weather, and we have the hot, sweaty weather down here in Florida. So I think if we could find a nice balance, I think that would be like, I'll give you a little bit of the heat, you give me a little bit of the wind, and I think we'll be okay.
I'll take some of that heat.
I bet you would. I bet you would. Well, Marvin, they're going to kill me if I don't ask you this, because they asked me this, and I know they're going to want to ask you, what got you into comics? Like, did you have a favorite hero or story that you read as a kid that really stuck out to you?
So back in my younger days, and my grandparents were always good in pushing reading. So I think I was around 9 or 10 when I read Dracula. Oh. And then I moved on to like Malcolm X's biography, Frankenstein, books like that. So I love Dracula. And then that was the year time around G.I. Joe. Oh, okay. So my grandmother started buying me G.I. Joe comics because I like G.I. Joe. So while reading through G.I. Joe, I saw, oh, look, there's just going to be this show, Spider-Man and his Amazing Friends. Who are these guys? So you had Iceman, you had Firestar. So we were at the grocery store, and I picked up Spider-Man and Captain America. So that got me hooked. So I was in for it then. And then being the reader that I was, I moved on to Avengers and X-Men. And then I got that rude awakening with the Spider-Man Amazing Friends. There's no Firestar in X-Men. What's the show talking about? Where is Firestar? Are you looking for Firestar? There's no Firestar. And then you find out, like, oh, she was just created for the show because they couldn't use Johnny Storm from Fantastic Four for some reason. I don't know why they couldn't use it. So it was supposed to be originally Johnny Storm and Spider-Man Amazing Friends, but it ended up being Firestar. And it was like an amalgamation of it was a Human Torch and Mary Jane.
That's what it looked like. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm reading Captain America, I'm reading X-Men, and I think that they had the local grocery store is Giant Eagle, and they had stopped selling comics. So I'm like, oh, where am I going to get my comics at? And then I discovered comic book stores. I didn't know the comic book there was such a thing as a store that you could buy comic books in.
Really?
So I started going to the local comic shop every month and picking up books. So I'm reading Captain America, I'm reading X-Men. Then you've got X Factor. Then your X-Force came along. So then once X-Force came along, this was your Jim Lee, your Mark Silvestri, and your Rob Liefeld. And then Image happened. So you had a situation where you had these guys that were pretty much superstars in their field. And they decided that, okay, we're making money here at Marvel. We're making money here at DC, but we could be making more if we did this on our own and created our own characters. And once that happened, it was just a flick of the switch in my head, like saying that, oh, people can make their own comics and do whatever they feel like with their own stuff. You don't have to just work for Marvel or DC. I didn't know about these other Comico and all those other things. I didn't know they existed because I had never been in a comic shop before. So it was from that point that I'm like, okay, let me try this and see. And I started writing, and I said that I tell everyone whenever I'm talking, I admit it wasn't good. It was too ingrained in things that I had read. So I had to somewhat pull away from some of the comics and lower my stack, so my brain wasn't filled with ideas of writing an X-Men book or a Wildcats book or a Stormwatch book. So it took a lot of time before I thought it was polished enough for me to even start approaching artists to draw the book. So it wasn't until 2012 when I met my artist, Mark Louis, and I never, ever pronounce his last name. One of these days, I'm going to get him on the stream, and he's going to pronounce his name 10 times, and I'm still going to get it right. I'm going to try.
Okay, we're definitely getting him on here because I want to see that. Because then if I mispronounce it, he's going to leave and we're going to be in trouble.
Right. I believe it's Vukungiat is his last name. We used to call him Mark V, but I had to stop doing that because his credits were getting messed up on the websites and everything. So when you click Mark V, it wouldn't pull up things he has done in the past. So
okay.
So now he's Mark Louis, and I'm going to call him only Mark Louis from now on.
So let me pause you for. So you started writing in 1992 and didn't connect with him until 2012.
Correct.
So you had 20 years. So you did 20 years to hone your craft and get to that point. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So there were some other things in between that, but it just never went anywhere. Where I had other artists working on it. I had one artist who just gave up and quit. It was pretty much that he met a pastor, and the pastor told him that drawing comics was a sin, so he stopped doing it. And I tried to talk him out of it. I said that this is a gift. You have a gift, and if you don't use that gift, then you're discrediting yourself and your deity that you're worshiping. So it's like, okay, so fine. He dropped out, and I actually acquired one of his characters to become interim. So he actually created that character to become interim. That's awesome. Yeah, it wasn't until 2012 when Mark and I got together, and I think we've got this weird rapport between us where whenever I'm writing something out, I give him like sometimes very vague descriptions on what I like to see, and he just goes to work and comes up with this marvelous page. I'm like, you got that all or what I just said? Because it's like we're sharing a brain sometimes whenever we're working on the book. And like I was saying, that we're currently working on issue 14 and 3 other books at the same time. And throughout this whole entire time, the only thing that I had asked him to change was Blaine's hair. So
that small thing.
Yeah, that Blaine has the long hair. I hated the long hair on the character, and he was really drawn like that. So in that issue, his hair gets burned in the fire, and then we go to the pointy crop. And it's the most ridiculous hairstyle ever, and it's that anime pointy hair, and it's just so, it looks so good on the character. And one day we're going to show how he makes his hair pointy, and it's not hair gel, and it's just so silly that the way we came up with why his hair looks like that.
Man, but I love to hear. I especially love how you just said that when you're writing the story, you give him, because anybody who. So let me just tell you guys this: if you guys are creative types or you're curious about it, he and I were talking before we recorded this. We're both writers, and it's really nice when I didn't mention this before. When you find a cover designer or an artist that when you send them stuff, they get it, but they get it like on this next level to where you couldn't even picture it in your head. Yeah. And so to hear you describe how you send him this with an idea and he sends it back to you and you're like, man, like you got that, like. Then and you know that you've got something special at that point, and that's just really, really awesome to hear that you found that with him. Couldn't be better timing, especially if you with writing 20 years, you've honed your craft, he's honed his. It seemed like that pairing was at a perfect timing for that.
Right. I mean, it's almost like destiny, that because when I met him, it was on digital webbing. And I immediately sent him an email and say, hey, are you interested in doing a comic? And he said, yeah, send me the script. And I sent him the script, and he said he was blown away with the story. And he said, let's do this, let's do it now. And it's just been steps along the way and I'm hoping that we get to do this for a very long time.
Well, and let's get started with that. So I will tell you so Marvin first reached out to me, I guess it was about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Give or take. And so I don't know if you guys know this, guys, but as a retailer, you get messages sometimes from people trying to pitch things to you or talk to you with things. And sometimes it's a lot of times it can be just fluff where someone's messing with you. As you guys know, with non-payers, non-scammers, it's the same thing. But I messaged back to him hoping to hear a response. And Marvin, I want to say you responded like within an hour. Like I got a response from you and I was like, oh shit, this is real. I'm like, okay, this guy really is communicating back with me. It's not some robot that's sending me some fake stuff. And when he sent me the preview, I was like, okay, well, let me just read it. It was 15 pages. So I decided to read it. And I'll tell you what, guys, I would say, Marvin, honestly, second or third page into the story, I stopped and I'm like, okay, this is what we've needed. This is what readers want to see. We want to see characters that are not just rehashes of superheroes or rehashes of storylines that has gone on for the past 3 decades. I mean, this is, like I told before, this is like a breath of fresh air reading this story. So I know that they're going to want to ask you, just like I'm going to ask you, here's issue 1. We have this one.
Yep.
So how soon or when is the release for issue 2?
We're going to be, issue 2 is going to be in May previews. So that'll be coming out in July. After issue 2, we're going to go bi-monthly. So I would say in the next, after July, so it should be September issue 3, and then November issue 4.
Well, let me tell you this. If you need someone to read over it before it gets to where it's put into the book format and put available to buy, I will gladly read this ahead of time, because I told him before, I finished this and immediately I wanted more. I mean, like I said, and one thing I like about this too, one issue I have sometimes with a lot of stories is you'll read a comic and there might be one thing that, like one instance or one scene that moves the story forward. That's not the case with this book, with this story, guys. I'm telling you, the minute you start reading it, this story starts and it does not stop. It continues to move forward. You're learning stuff about the characters. And Mark, I'm going to ask you this because you did say this. So are you a fan of like hinting at things to come, and then you want to kind of hold things a little bit back to the chest and say, hey, here's a little nugget of information, but I'm not going to show you everything yet?
Yeah. So the one thing that we're doing is we're not doing origins unless it's important to the story. So in the next issue, it starts off with a little bit of Bolt's background.
Okay.
And we're not going to even touch interim until really later into the story, because it's not important to where we're going into the story. So we're not doing a stop the story, here's an origin, now back to the story. It has to flow. So every origin is going to be part of the story. So it's going to go, this happened then, and then this is what the results of that are going to be.
Well, let me say a thank you as a reader, because that is one thing that's very frustrating when you're reading a story, whether it's comics or books, is where you've got this great flow going, this good story arc, and all of a sudden you get an interruption because they decide they want to throw in a storyline, an origin story, at the most inopportune time. Mm-hmm. It doesn't flow with what you've just come from, and it doesn't lead into what you're going. Sometimes you don't even see the results of that origin story until 5 or 6 issues later, and by then you've forgotten about it, or you go, wait a minute, what was that again? So I'm glad to hear that you guys, and I think it's because you were such a big fan of comics as a kid growing up too, and as a young teen, that you understand, you still remember what it's like to be a reader and to move through and stuff, and you've held that to heart when you're writing. So thank you for that too.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the first things that we decided up front, is that origins are only important as they move the story along. If you're reading a book and you're like, and the story there's a stop sign that says, and this is how Dr. whatever got his abilities. He was in a lab and something spilled on him. Now he's an amazing man. Like, that's not necessary. I mean, come on.
No, I mean, it sucks you right out of the story. Even when you have to wait a few weeks for a story, you still remember. So like when I read comics, especially one like this, when issue 2 comes out, I'll reread issue 1 the day before or the day of before it comes in. And so when you get a storyline like that, where it's this random origin story, and then you read it and you read the next book, you're like, so wait, what was happening? You have to go back to read the issue before that one, because you don't know where the hell they're going with it. So it's very, very frustrating with that. It's just,
and I really hope that once you read this, I think it's the first 3 pages of issue 2 before we get into the now of this character Bolt, and how we're going to mess with him, and how his thought processes are blended with his, like, this tragedy he has when he's younger. And then once we get into later, I think issue 6 and 7, we get into Mystic's background.
Oh.
And we go into a little bit of the swords that he's carrying, and give a little bit of background on that. And it's just this one scene where there's all these other guys around. You're like, and I don't say anything, and I just want you to imagine it. Why are all these guys carrying swords? What's going on with these swords? And it's just that there's going to be that thing where we're going to wait a little bit, and then we're going to go right later on into the origins of those swords. And I just hope that everyone enjoys it and likes it, because I liked it when I wrote it.
Well, and see, to me, and you know, let me address that too from a writing standpoint. So now writing books is very different than comics, because when you write, when I was writing my books, I didn't have the the joy of having an artist that was able to put what I was writing into picture, like throughout the whole thing, because writing comics, it's a much more colorful and vibrant experience than writing a novel. So I will say that even in the first issue, you can tell when you're reading it that you enjoy what you're writing. It's not like you're not just hired on to write a story that somebody else created, which does happen a lot with other publishers and other writers, which is another thing I want to get back to you about with that is with your writing. This isn't just a comic book you're writing. You created this world. This is your baby, correct?
Yes.
So there's another thing, guys. Think about this. He's wearing, as a creator, he's wearing two hats now. He's wearing the world building hat, which most of these guys, if they have a story, they go, oh, here's a great story. Let me hire this guy to come and write it for me. So that's typically you have one person who will, like, especially with books, some people will just do world building and hire out somebody else. Like James Patterson is famous for doing that. Here's an idea. Let me have Gabrielle Deschanel write it or somebody else write it. Here's an idea. Run with it. You came up with the idea and you're the one who's right behind it, steering the car. And it comes through beautifully, because when you read it, you can tell that you're passionate about these characters. You have in your head when you're reading, it's not like you read issue 1 and it stops and you're like, well, where do we go from here? Like, it's not like what's going to happen next. It's more of a, where are we going from? Like, what's going to happen with these guys next? Like, you can tell that you have created this, you're creating this foundation to build on. And like, when you did this, when did you come up with the idea for this story?
I mean, it's such an amalgamation of a lot of things. So it's just watching the news over the years and just listening to people talk and the things that people talk about. And it's all, people are talking about sickness and things that are bothering them and things they can't control. And that's where all those things come together, because what this edge is, it's not a good thing for these characters. It's not going to ever be a good thing for them, because it's like a poison. It's poisoning them. And the more they're using these powers, the more it's going to hurt them in the end. And this Revenant character is the only one that knows that. And he wants to tell people, but then he doesn't want to tell anybody because his mind is so scrambled. He doesn't realize or know who he is anymore. And we're going to get to the point where he's going to talk to his knife. He names his knife Mr. Idiom, and the knife doesn't talk back. We're not going to have dialogue from the knife, but
are you sure?
In his mind, the knife is talking to him, and his head is so scrambled. And we're really like, this is why we really wanted to do that story with him later on, to just dig into his mind and just show you his madness and why he's like that, and where it's coming from, and the things that happened to him to cause him to go off into this path. And it's just going to be he's just a character that's always going to be a lot of trouble for the characters, for me, and for the readers, because from talking to other people, they love the character of Revenant. They love him. He's like, there's one guy I know who says he's my favorite character. And I said that, no, he can't be your favorite character. He's like the bad guy.
What are you doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, you know how a lot of stories, when the bad guy, like a Harley Quinn or a Sabretooth or a Lex Luthor or a Green Goblin, and they have this feeling where they're a popular bad guy, so now they want to redeem that character and make him a good guy and put him with the good guys and say that, oh, he's just misunderstood. I mean, you can feel that Revenant's misunderstood, but he's still a jerk, and I'm still going to continue to write him as a jerk. And if he ever teams up with anybody, he's only going to do it so he can screw him over.
I love it. But see, and that's one thing, and I want to play with this area for a minute with your characters. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of the viewers here, and myself included, who read comics and who are really into this stuff. One of the biggest complaints or biggest issues we have right now in the comic book industry is unrelatable characters. Yeah. These characters that have no depth. You don't want to root for them and you don't want to hate them. There's no emotional connection whatsoever. Yeah. And like what you just said, that guy that you talked to who loves the bad guy, you're like, what? You're like, that's unusual. But the reason is you've written these characters that even the villains do have likable qualities or qualities that you can relate to. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, what is one of the biggest downfalls in the comic world right now, is that you're just getting characters that no one cares about. And you know, Marvin and I were talking beforehand how with Endgame, the way that the MCU has built their films. When Iron Man snaps his fingers and you see the Infinity Stone start to wreak havoc on his skin, you're engrossed. I mean, like, I'll be honest with you, I shed a tear a little bit. Did you cry a little bit when he died? A little bit.
I teared up in Black Panther. I teared up in Infinity War, and I teared up in Endgame.
Okay.
I mean, I admitted that the tears was coming because you're. It's like you grew up with these people, like they're friends.
Yes,
these characters
exactly.
are, and you don't want to see anything bad to them happen. Like, you had multiple moments in Endgame. You're like, Black Widow's dead, Iron Man is dead, Hulk's arm is all messed up, and you're like, dang, they put these characters through the ringer throughout these movies, and then you see Captain America show up, and he hands Falcon the shield, and you're like, oh, come on, man, how much emotion are they going to drag out of me in these comic book? It's a comic book movie. You're not supposed to cry.
This is an action film, damn it.
You're not supposed to cry. Like, you didn't cry over Lethal Weapon or those movies or things like that.
Die Hard,
Die Hard. They didn't make you cry, but why? It's because you started from the beginning with a character, and you had growth with the character as you went through these movies. Tony Stark was a different person in Iron Man than he was in Endgame. Captain America was a different person. Black Widow was they were all different. And one of the characters who had one of the greatest story arcs in that was Thor.
Yes.
Ragnarok completely changed who that character was and made him a likable character. He was not likable in those first two Thor movies.
No, you hated him because he was so arrogant.
And then you took away his prized possession, that hammer. And then you made him fat. And it was just the accumulation of what's going on with these characters. And you're saying, yeah, that's how depression works. Even with the WandaVision, that's how depression works. She's going through stages of depression because she doesn't know how to deal with trauma.
Yeah, see, and now I gotta ask you this too with your characters. You said you're on issue 14, right? That's how far you are with it. So now, when you put your characters, when you're writing, let me ask you this: do you plan the details that come, or are you one of the writers where you're surprised sometimes with what happens to your characters? You're like, oh shit, sorry this is happening, but this is the way the story's leading me.
Yeah, I think you do it both. I think that sometimes I sit here and I let the characters talk to me about what's going on. So, I'm not going to say which character it is, but we're issue 5. We're going to take one of the character's powers away from him.
Oh.
And it's going to be a situation where you're taking away this character and his most prized possession, his powers. And then we're going to say, all right, what are you willing to do to get your powers back?
Oh, love that question.
And it's not going to be good for him. It's not going to be good for the team, because it's going to have a detrimental effect on the character moving forward.
Yeah, see, and I think that is a main part of why I like this. And this is only the first issue, but being able to talk with you and hear this is what gets me excited about the future works you're doing, because you're giving these characters, real problems, and there's no cop out. You're not giving them like, here's this problem, but magically here's your way out, go through the door, please collect $200 around, go, and nothing's going to happen to you. Like, you're literally talking about taking your characters who you created these guys. I mean, you are closer to them than anybody else. Mm-hmm. So when you're writing it and you're putting them, I know when I was writing some of my stories, like I like to write horror a lot. And there was one where I had an idea and I thought this character was going to make it all the way through the trilogy. I'm like, yeah, they're going to make it to the end of it. And I started writing book 3 and I realized this guy's got to die. And I was like, and like you said, I had that, we were talking earlier where I had to stop, and I literally stopped writing for 3 days because I didn't want to do it. I was like, okay, maybe there's a cop out I can use to save him. And every single time I tried to write something different for that character, it came across as fake, it came across as forced, and it just wasn't good. So finally, I was sitting there one night at 1 a.m. I said, screw it. I'm going to write it the way that the story is wanting me to write it, and we'll see what happens. Right. And I worked night shift at the time, so I was up till 4 a.m. and I finally wrote it. When I got done, I was so drained, but it made that book, that ended up being everyone's favorite book in that trilogy of novellas I wrote because of that. So I'm telling you, as a reader, people reading your stories, they are going to be so grateful to you that you are really putting them through legitimate situations that they are going to be affected by, whether it's in a good way or a bad way, you're going to actually let them go through that trauma, go through those problems, and have to deal with the consequences. I mean, that's fantastic.
Right. Right. So in the next issue, we are going to do a little swerve with one of the characters, and I think it comes off really good because it allowed me to do some really nutty stuff with the Revenant character again.
Nice.
And then so I mean, there's going to be a lot going on, and the one thing that I always tell people about with this book, it's all about escalating things, where we're going to go from a single villain to a group of villains, and then we're going to have we have a character called Kyrad that Mark created. And he's like our juggernaut, and he's this hulking, moving thing that you can't stop. And we're going to have to we have to get the characters to figure out a way to stop him. And we have one scene where he needs to get from one continent to the other. And I always make a joke, like, he can't get on a commercial flight. He doesn't have an ID. He's not wearing a shirt. His pants are tattered, and he's got like this cuff in his mouth because the people who sent him don't want him to talk. And we just have him walk along the bottom of the ocean.
Oh,
and
my.
There's a scene where he's walking, and we have the fish, and the fish are swimming out of his way as he's walking across the bottom of the ocean.
See, isn't it? God, that's brilliant. You could be, and see, that's another thing. You're making it real. I mean, in terms of the story, you didn't, like you said, you didn't take the cop out and say, oh, you know, this guy's messed up, but just put him on a plane.
Yeah.
It wouldn't happen in real life. Yeah, this guy getting on a plane, you're going to have people going, what the hell is going on? Tackle that mother, like, get that guy. Like, you wouldn't be able to just sit there and have him sit next to your grandmother on a flight and make it.
Yeah. Like the guy, he's like 8 feet tall, so so he wouldn't even fit in. He couldn't even sit on the plane, or even like stow away on the plane. Like you it's like you're not going to miss this guy. He's walking through the terminal. Like, who's that big tall guy? Is he a basketball player? What? And he don't got no shirt on? What's going on? And
then can you imagine you're the one sitting on a plane? He comes and goes, "That's my seat next to you." Like, oh hell no, this is not happening. I mean, it's and that to me, God, the fact that you're doing that is just, I for your story, the fact that you're going that far in the future, it's going to benefit the story. Because I know, like you, I was reading up that you recently said in an interview you did with someone else that you don't see, like, you're going to keep writing it as the story continues to come. Like, you know, you're not going to stop it unless it ends up doing it yourself, because you're having so much fun writing it.
Yeah.
And to that, you had originally said that you had planned 25 issues with this.
Yeah. Yes, we originally had an end in mind where Revenant finally gets his hands on Tartable and he beats the ever living shit out of him.
Nice.
And then it would have been where the things that Revenant thinks Tartable took away from him, his mind finally clears and he realizes that thing didn't exist. And we may still play that up, but we really don't want the Revenant character to get to that point really fast, because people have started to tell me they like him. So I'm not going to keep him around in the story as much as people think I'm going to. He's going to go away for a little while, then he might come back later. But I don't want to get into that position where the character becomes so popular that I think about making him a good guy.
You know, and it's funny you say that, because what you just said makes me think of the biggest problem with a very popular series. Have you ever read the Alex Cross series by James Patterson?
Yes.
So I feel like that's what happened with that character. You know, he said before, he gets death threats on, don't you dare kill Nana Mama or we'll come and get you. And I'm thinking, like, so he had to do, he kind of has done the same thing where he created these characters that were so likable that now he can't get, or he says he can't get rid of them. And so that storyline is now 25 books deep, I think, 26. Yeah. And we're talking novels. Right. So that story, if you read the first, I'll even be on 10 to 13 books, they are fantastic. There are problems he faces. He has his girlfriend gets killed in the very first book. Along Came a Spider. His wife ends up getting murdered later. So you're like, oh shit! But now all of a sudden, you won't let his grandmother die, who's 97 years old. But like,
it sounds like that movie, that like Misery. Like,
yes, yes, you don't dare kill my misery.
Yeah, exactly, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's I get it, and I get people get attached to things. But I just want to motion again is that I want you to like the characters. Don't form too much of an attachment to them, because they're going. I mean, that this edge is eventually going to wear them out. And I mean, I can't say that they're all going to die, but they could get infected, and then that could be worse than death.
Man, see, and I like that you've created this world where you're honestly, Marvin, your options are limitless. You create a world without a ceiling, if that makes sense. Like you didn't box yourself in with this series. I mean, you created this world where you literally can go whatever direction you want to with, like you said before, you can introduce different characters, you can rotate things around.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like you've just got this set one-way street where you have to go forward. I mean, you can branch off, do whatever you'd like to. And to me, like, that is really exciting that you're creating this world that we now can invest into, that there is no, oh yeah, it's going to be, 10 issues and then we're done. I mean, we were talking before, you said you got story arcs you're planning and stuff. And I mean, after talking with you, and I know you listeners hearing this, you're going to be rest assured, this story is moving forward and is not showing any signs of stopping. I mean, whatsoever. And with that being said, let me approach this part, Marlo. Let me get a little bit into the technical side of it here. Me as a writer, I know how difficult writing can be, and it can be very rewarding at the same time. It can be very stressful, depending on what you're doing with the story. But one thing that I think you've grasped that a lot of writers, myself included, failed to either understand or failed to implement is promotion. Because it's very easy I shouldn't say very easy. It is easier to write the book and to write a story than it is to promote it. Because, I mean, I don't know about you, but as writers, we like to be in our own heads. We like creating these worlds, but now you're telling me I have to go out and now talk about it and do all this other stuff that some of us weren't familiar with. I had no idea how big it was. So can you kind of go into a little bit of how, when you wrote the first book, the steps you took, how you had to get into promotion, and how important that is in this industry?
Sure. So I think the what you want to do with this is, you're not only selling that book, you're also selling yourself. You're selling your story. So you want people to know who you are as a person. And sometimes that even helps like move the book too, because they're like, oh, I want to support this guy. He sounds like a pretty cool guy. So you're out there and you're not selling yourself, but telling people, saying, hey, this is my story. This is why I did this. This is why I did that. And then you're saying, oh, by the way, here's this book. And you can sometimes, when you're reading these characters, you can like pick out some parts of my personality that's leaking into the characters. And it sometimes makes it more interesting for that person to be able to say, hey, there's a real person behind this book. And that's something you don't get with your major publishers, where you don't get the personality of a Jim Lee, or, I mean, I'm not gonna say Rob Liefeld because he's all over social media, but
we love you.
Yeah, some of these guys are sitting behind these books and not in front of the book, and not telling their story, and because they don't have time. So they're counting on the Marvel logo and DC logo to sell those books. But I think that as an indie creator, we have to be more personable with people, because it's a harder sell for us than it is for a bigger publisher or a bigger creator to get their book out there. So it's going to conventions and talking to people and taking the time out where somebody comes to your table. And if I have to spend 20 minutes talking to somebody about something to sell them a book, I'm just going to take 20 minutes to talk to them just to sell them one book. I mean, I've had situations, like I had a situation where there was a few people who came up to my table and they bought everything I had.
Whoa.
And then it came back the next day to get some more stuff. And they were telling me how, yeah, we used to be on drugs and we got off of it. And your book was really important to us, where it's talking about this drug that people are taking. They don't even know they're on it. And then some people are voluntarily taking this stuff. And it just said it made sense to them about the story that you're telling, because it was something that they got into because of the drug thing. When I said, oh, it's a drug, they were like, oh, that picked them up. And I'm like, okay. So, I mean, it's a lot of things going on in people's minds. You never know what's going to pique their interest in something. So you just have to be a personal person, smile if you can, and just talk about the things that you are familiar with, what you know. And And most of the time, if someone is willing to sit there and talk to you, they're going to purchase your book and be like, oh yeah, this, I can see why this guy, why we like him as a person and we like his book. So, I mean, like I said, the promotion part is the hardest part after you create, but it's about hitting those working out that Facebook algorithm, and making sure you're sharing to groups, on pages, and doing things like this and talking to people, doing streams and everything. Like, I mean, it's the gamut, like I said, that I have to take off the creator hat and put on the promoting hat and promote for months and months, and I don't get a chance to create while I'm doing that. And now I'm trying to go back into creating, and I had to tell Mark yesterday, like, I just need 20 minutes of quiet so I can stare at the wall, and then everything will come flooding back. Because it's always like that. Like, take off the creator hat, put the other hat on. All right, take it off, put the other one back on. Give me 20 minutes to reset my brain, and I'm good.
See, and I love hearing that, because and some people hear that and go, wait, so you stare at a wall for 20 minutes. And it's funny, because when I was writing, when I was trying to pursue it full time, you know, I had my office set up. We were in a small apartment at the time, and I had my office set up in the corner of the living room where I could see the window. And it wasn't like it was a crazy view, but when I looked out, the view never changed. It was a very I'm trying to, not safe place, but it was never changing. So I knew what I was going to see when I looked out the window. And it was the same thing. There were times where I'd work my job and I'd get home and, you know, I had to like shut down my brain. And so I'd sit there and everyone's like, oh, so you just jump right into it. And it was never a jump right in. Like, I never had it to where I could come home from work, flip open the laptop and just start writing. There was a process for me. I had to, like what you said, I had to stop and take off my work hat. And I had to, like, now I got to put on my creative side. Now I got to get back in touch with my characters to be able to enter that world and make it, you know, come across as believable and realistic.
Right. So when I say, just to clarify, people, when I say stare at the wall, like you said, you're looking for that spot on the wall that never changes, and that's your reset button. So it's not like it's like a computer where there's something churning on the computer. It's using up all your processing. So I have to restart the computer to get that processing power back. So I need processing power to write.
Man, I love it. I love how you said that part, spot on the wall is like a reset button. I love it, because that's exactly what it is. You're powering down and getting, because when you're writing, it takes a lot out of you mentally and emotionally, because everyone thinks writing is just like a regular job, and it's not. It's very emotionally and mentally draining, because you are pouring, like you said, you're pouring yourself into these characters. And a good writer, like you said, you've got to be, if you're promoting your stuff, you're out there where you want people who like you, they're going to like your stuff because you do come across in your work. There's characteristics and personality traits that go into it. And just from talking with you, Marvin, I can see that come across in some of the dialogue and stuff. I'm like, especially after just talking with you, I'm gonna have to read this again, because I guarantee you there's things that stick out to me and go, that's Marvin. That's a piece of Marvin right there.
So the one of the things that we're really doing on that is symbols. So there's a whole entire gamut of the symbols. You've seen the symbol on Mystic Sword, and then the character, the terrorist character, when he rips open his shirt, the same symbol. And a few pages earlier, when Interim is going up the steps, there's another symbol burned into the table. So I want people to pay attention, because these things are going to pop up from now on in the story, and there's a whole entire connection thing going on with these symbols.
Just to show you symbols. And one thing I like about that is now you're doing what I like to call, you're leaving Easter eggs.
Yes.
And if anybody everybody knows that one of the best things that happens in a successful franchise, successful storyline is Easter eggs, because people love being able to down the road go, oh shit, I forgot about that, because then it's like mind blown. And what you just said with the symbols, have you ever read Jim Butcher before?
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay, so he writes a series called the Dresden Files. It's like
yeah. Okay, I know Dresden Files.
So his books, your writing style, and this is a compliment. If you guys don't know I know some of the viewers do that. We talk Jim Butcher sometimes. He is one of the best writers who does this. And I'm just going to say it. And this is from one writer to another, Marvin. Your writing style is very reminiscent of Jim Butcher's, in the sense that when you are reading your stuff, not only does it come across as relatable, but you're reading stuff going, well, wait, what about that? And then later on, it reveals itself. You're like, oh, it's like, it's mind blown, and you have to go back, and it's just, it makes the story more fun. It keeps the pacing going, and it keeps you kind of in the dark in a way that you as the writer, I know, have planned.
Yeah.
You want to keep, there's certain things that you know from the beginning that you may not reveal till issue 15 or issue 16.
Yeah.
And so I love that. I love that you're doing Easter eggs. I love that your characters are going to just go through real hardship. I mean, that's to me, it's very enlightening to know that. I mean, to me, it makes me excited. Like I can't wait to read more of them.
So one of the things that we're working on right now is it's called Angel Wings, and this is a story that's going to take place between issue 9 and 10, where we have a army general who was so they were like paramilitary, like a rescue team called Angel Wings. Each one of the characters has an angel wing tattooed on their arm, and it's kind of like the old "we can't fly alone," so you have to have your partner with you to have two wings. So they're a team, they're a family, and they're all wounded soldiers now. So they've rotated back into the world, and they've been given cyborg parts as part of their rehabilitation. But these cyborg parts are owned by their by the government, so they can turn them off if they want to. So these guys have to pay they're still paying their dues back on these parts that they have, so they can come and repossess them if they feel like it. So what ends up happening is this general gets leaked information that there are WMDs in Dubai, but these WMDs aren't weapons, they're people. So he's forming his team back up to go in there and get these things before they can be used nefariously. But on the other side, there's going to be a team featuring Blaine, possibly Revenant, and other characters that they're going to send after them to stop them.
Oh my! And this is a story that you are planning between your regular issues. So are these going to be like if you have issue 9 come out, is the next issue going to be the one in between it and then 10 comes out?
Yes.
Oh, see, I love that. I was hoping you were going to say we're going to do issues 1 through 30, then randomly put that one out and say this goes between 9 and 10. I'm like,
because it's kind of a lead story, so it's going to expand on a few things and then lead right into the next issue.
God, love it. That gets me excited. I mean, because one story that I think did that well is, did you read the Dark Tower series by Stephen King by chance?
Yes.
So you remember, I think I have it behind me. Do you remember, The Wind Through the Keyhole?
Yes.
That's like book 4.5. Mm-hmm. And everybody, when he did that, when he wrote that book, they're all like, well, no, that's not the book we want. We want book 6. Like they wanted the next, next book and not this one. And then everybody sang a different tune the minute that book was released, because they went, oh shit, this is actually really important. Yeah. Because it is that there are some stories that don't belong in the main storyline, but are crucial to it, that where they fit just right in here. They're like almost like 0.5. So if you have like issue 9, this would be like 9.5, then here's 10. And I think that's another thing that a lot of writers tend to forget to do, is they in their head, you know where you're going, you know what you're going with the next storyline. So there's sometimes where you'll read issues or books and you go, how did we go from this took place in this issue to now that we're here with this new problem or with this new character, and it doesn't really flow or make sense. So I'm actually really excited to know that you're going to be doing that on a regular basis. And I know the readers are going to love that too, because that's one thing. To be kept in the dark on purpose is one thing. To be kept in the dark because the writer just didn't include it, that's one where it can kind of hurt, because you're like, I don't know what the hell's going on.
So we're also going to do that with between issue 4 and 5, a story called Adrenaline Rush, which again is going to feature Blaine because he's cool and I like it.
100%. I can see why you do that.
So this one is going to be a character has gotten a hold of a vial of the Edge, untainted.
Oh, shit.
And he's going to sell it on the black market. So this is going to bring together multiple nefarious characters to try to get a hold of this thing. And we're going to introduce assassin character called Ryle, who is probably the most he's the unluckiest assassin ever. So there's a scene, and I shared it on Facebook, where he's drawing a bead on Blaine, and a pigeon lands on this in front of his scope and is staring at him through the scope. And as he shoos the bird away and looks again, and Blaine is staring at him, and he's just pointing at him like this.
oh my God. And hearing you laugh as you describe what you're doing, that is one thing that just from talking with you, I can tell you're not going to lose it. But that's what I think happens with some writers is because you and I were talking before how you get this great idea, which this is a phenomenal idea. The difference is you have, I can tell you've got great persistence and confidence in your work. I mean, that comes through, especially the persistence that you worked hard. You started writing in 1992 and it wasn't until 2012, correct, that this started coming together. So that means you took 20 years of writing other stories that at the time you didn't realize was leading you to this moment. You created that foundation of going through, like you said, like my first stuff that I wrote, oh my God, it was shit. It was terrible. I mean, like you, I'll be honest. My first stuff, my first book, I took it off the market. You can't buy it anymore. It was that bad. I was like, I'm not letting this be out there.
And that's one thing that I want to tell to anyone who wants to be a creator in anything. The first thing you do is going to be trash. Just
Yep.
it's going to be bad. And it's just it's you're learning. I mean, no one does anything right the first time. I don't think like a Joe Montana or a Tom Brady when they threw their first pass, it wasn't perfect.
Correct.
I think like even like a great baseball player struck out sometimes at first and didn't hit a home run the first time they swung the bat. And it's something that I have to tell a few people sometimes is that you don't always swing for the fences. You don't have to always swing. So sometimes you can lay down a bunt and win the game.
Yeah, and that's true. Like, and I think that's true too. Like, for instance, I know that a lot of people, guys, when you see this, you know, this is not an overnight success. This isn't just one day Marvin woke up, wrote this story, put it out there, and bam, overnight, you know, this is his first story, and it's just, you know, firing on all cylinders. To get to this point, you have to be like, you have to be okay to, you know, to take a leap forward. You know, write that first story, because you're never going to get to that nugget. It's almost like sculpting. The first block you knock off of the sculpture, you're not going to see anything. But when you get finished with it, you're like, damn, that is fantastic. And it's the same thing with creative stuff. If you're out there and you want to be a writer, you want to be an artist, actor, musician, whatever it is, don't let fear of failure stop you, because that could stop you. You could be putting out the next good story in 2-3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true, right?
Like there's two sayings that I sometimes think about, is that the only thing at the end of your life when you're laying there, the only thing that you're going to be mad about is regret. It's that you regret that you didn't do something. And it's never about how many times you fall down, it's how many times you get up.
God. Marvin, that's so true, man. I'm telling you that this has been such good conversation. I know the viewers, when they watch this, there's so many nuggets of information you've given, not only about your story, but about insight into you and how you've gotten into this industry. So I want to kind of wrap up with one question I've got for you, which I didn't send to you on purpose, because I some of this I've got to kind of surprise. You know, I sent him a few questions, but told him ahead of time a lot of this, guys, this is like he said, this interview is good for both. It's a good give and take. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, he gets something, I get something. This is a very rewarding conversation. Like I'm getting so much from it, and I thank you for that, Marvin. But I want to end with this question. Let's say that you're walking into a Starbucks. I walk into, we're right there. I'm somebody you've never met. And, you know, I recognize you and I see, and I'm like, okay, I'm like, you know, I come up to you and say, listen, I'm just starting out. What kind of advice would you give me as a writer, just wanting to start off, wanting to do a comic, wanting to do a book, get into the field? What, if you had like 2 minutes to tell me something, what would you tell me in those 2 minutes?
Stay the course. It's always going to, my thing is always stay the course. Know what you're doing and stay your own course. And when I look at Marvel, when I look at DC, the movies, I saw Marvel stay the course. They got knocked down a few times, but they picked themselves up and kept going. And DC didn't do that, and this is why they're in the position they are now, where they decided we don't want the universe that's being created. We want something else. So we're just going to start all over again. Here's a new Batman. Here's possibly a new Superman, and just go from there. You can't do that, because it's all it is stop, start, stop, start. Once you're in the car and it's moving, don't hit the gas unless there's a stop sign, because or a stoplight. I don't want people running stoplights. But I mean, know what you want to do and go for it. I mean, that's all it is go for it. Like, hone your craft, talk to other creators, read a lot, and if you have to, take some classes. I mean, it's never going to hurt for you to go down to the community college and take a writing course and a marketing course, because those are the things that you're going to need to know going forward is that you got to know how to write something, you know how to market it, because that's where it's all going to be in those two things. Unless you're hiring someone else to do those things for you, learn your craft. That's it. Know what you're doing, and don't give up. If you fall down, dust your stuff off, get up again, because you can take a break. It's okay, but never give up on your dreams, because that's the only thing that you're in the end of your life. The only thing you're going to have is that regret that you didn't do something.
Yeah, man. See, and I take that to heart, because, you know, there's times where even running this business, having a comic book store, there's times where it's tough. I mean, you know, and a lot of people, you know, your customers or even your readers, they don't see that. They don't see the times where you struggle. So a lot of times it can come across that it's easy, or that you don't, you know, people can look and go, well, he's not struggling. You know, Marvin never struggled with this. How come he's doing so well? And the thing is, it's because you don't let those moments stop you. Those moments don't define you. If anything, like Marvin said, let those fall down, get some armor, put it on, get it back up. Like, if you let it keep you down, then that's where you're going to stay. I mean, it's 100% up to you on where you're going to go forward and how you do that. So, I mean, man, so much good conversation, Marvin. If we had the time, shoot, man, I'd had this thing go for like 2 hours and stuff. I know we're already getting close to 7 o'clock and everything. So let me ask you this. I would love to be able to do this again if we could.
Yeah, always. Anytime you wanted me to come back. I mean, I've got stories, man. I got all kinds of convention stories. I got New York stories. So I got New York.
Well, I'll tell you this, man. What I want to do with this, and the viewers know this now, that I've been wanting to create a show to move forward, talking about comic culture and things like that. So yeah, if you're willing to want to do it, we can try to match our schedules up, and let's do it again. Because he and I were talking. Everybody knows the biggest new news in the comic world is how Diamond's losing Marvel now. So we were talking all about the business side of that kind of stuff too. So I mean, he and I feel like Marvin, you and I could go for hours and not get bored. Well, dude, I had to say thank you so much, Marvin. I know these guys would appreciate it. Guys, if you get a chance, Marvin, do me a favor. Can you tell them where they can follow you on Facebook or Twitter, things like that, so they can follow you on social media?
On Facebook, I am at The Edge Comic. On Twitter, I am at Marvin Wynn. On Instagram, I am at The Edge Comic. Also, I just started a newsletter on the 24th, the day the book released. I sent out my first newsletter. So I'll send you that, and then if you want to post it up when you put the video,
please, of course,
sign up for the newsletter and things like that.
Yeah, so guys, if you're watching this, by the time you watch it, I'll have all that posted. It's gonna be right here, so make sure you look at the bottom of the screen. I'm gonna have that all right there, so you can follow him, because I'm telling you that if you've not read the story yet and you haven't gotten into it, I've got the copies available, ready to go. Marvin I talked to, he's got some awesome. I don't want him to show it yet. I guess, should we show him, Marvin, or should we make him wait?
Show him
we show him a little. Look, look at this. He's got action figures, guys. He's got the whole 9 yards with stuff. There's other things that I won't say yet because I don't want to give it away. But he's sending some awesome stuff to us that I'll be able to have during the shows, available for sale and stuff to be able to pick up. So make sure you keep tuning in, guys. Thank you all for being here. Marvin, thank you especially for taking time out of your day.
Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Yep, and guys, we will see you next time. So thank you, guys.